All right, just for the folks standing in back, there's at least 15 chairs up front, so if you want to come up front, you can get a seat. Our title of our next talk is The Boaz and Anderson Mills Mastodon by Carrie Eaton from UW-Madison. Almost didn't remember my alma mater.
So this Mastodon is part of the UW Geology Museum permanent collection, and it's been part of that collection for over a century. Back in 2014, this skeleton had been part of the collection for 117 years, and it had been on display for 99 of those years. And in that time, it had become part of the museum's identity. It had become an icon of campus. It was integrated into the logo. It was on all of the signs, the wayfinding signs pointing to the museum, telling you where to go. It was featured in campus visitor guides and some other campus newspaper publications, and was arguably the most famous fossil in Wisconsin. In preparation for celebrating the Mastodon's 100th anniversary of being on display, I started doing some research into the history of the specimen. I wanted to know how we acquired it, how it had become part of the collection. We had known a lot about its discovery story. It was, up until that point, known as the Boaz Mastodon. It had been found near Richland Center, Wisconsin, by a group of young farm kids who were looking around on their family property after a large rainstorm. Digging through university historical archives started to reveal a different story, though. And the more I dug, the more I found. And over time, I discovered that this skeleton was, in fact, a composite. Some of the founders of our university were very interested in putting a mastodon on display. Keep in mind that this was the early 1900s when paleontology was going through a big renaissance, and mastodons were valued by everyone. They were considered a great tribute to paleontology. And so our campus administrators really wanted to make a mastodon, and to do that they needed composite bones. Eventually I came across the field notes of the geologist E.R. Buckley, who was part of our department and worked for the state survey. And finding field notes that date to 1897 is a pretty exciting moment, all the way down to quill pen ink drawings of what the Boaz Mastodon site looked like and how many bones were recovered. And what I discovered was that that list was very small, and only a few bones of the skeleton came from the Boaz site. I eventually found historical photographs of another site called Anderson Mills. That was 1898. Another rural part of the state, another farm field, and a discovery by children, which was pretty exciting. Looking at those photographs and examining the taphonomy of the bones and the style of them revealed that most of that skeleton actually came from Anderson Mills, and the bones are in fantastic shape. This skeleton is so much of a part of our museum that we changed the narrative, we told the community the story, we sort of fessed up, I guess, to this Franken skeleton of two very historic mastodons that helped to connect our museum to rural parts of the state. And so for me, when I walk through our museum every morning to open it, and I look at this skeleton, I think of how connected we are to the land around us and how wonderful it is that we have something on display in our museum that represents not only geologic history and paleontology, but also the importance of the antiquity of our museums and how important it is to dig through that documentation and learn more about the things that we have.